So today we're going to be talking about how the body regulates things and reproduction as well. So we're going to start first with the excretory system. Okay, so the main portion of the excretory system is going to consist of the urinary tract. So we have the kidneys. Okay, you've got a right and a left kidney. We have the ureters, which are these little tubes right here. Okay, the bladder down here and the urethra here. So the two kidneys are going to be what filters the blood to produce the urine, and we'll talk a little bit more about urine in just a second. But the kidneys are going to be the actual main producers of urine. They're the ones that are going to actually do a job in this urinary tract. The ureters, these two tubes here that run from the kidneys down to the bladders, they're just a conduit, they're just a tube for the urine to travel from the kidney down to the bladder. The bladder is just a storage bin. Okay, it does not produce any urine, it just stores the urine. And then the urethra is this tube here that leads to the outside. And that's how the urine will exit the bladder and go all the way to the outside of the body. So the kidneys are going to be the place where the urine is actually formed. Okay, and they're going to form the urine by filtration. So they're going to be filtering the blood. So remember we talked about how we're going to be focused on how these systems work together. Okay, and this is one of the ways that the systems will work together. Okay, the kidneys will filter the blood, and they will filter out toxins, they will filter out ions, excess salts, proteins. Okay, so they will filter out what's needed, and they will also pay attention to the water content. Okay, if there's enough water, then if there's excess water and plenty of water, then the urine will end up being relatively dilute. If there's very little water, then the urine will be really concentrated. Okay, so like I said, the kidneys are going to produce the urine. They're going to filter the blood. The urine should normally be pale yellow. It should be clear, in the sense not color, but in the sense that it shouldn't be cloudy. Okay, it should have a relatively neutral pH, so not acidic, not basic. Should be right around a 7. Okay, and the formation of this urine is going to help regulate the water in our bodies. Okay, so if, again, like I said before, if there is plenty of water, then the excess water will go into the urine, and it should be nice and pale colored. If there's not enough water, the urine becomes very concentrated because the body will reabsorb that water to help retain as much as they can. So water regulation for your body is done by the kidneys, and this is an extremely important function. That's why you have two kidneys, so in case one stops working, you have a backup, because this is such an important function. In addition to urine being excreted from the body, we also have the removal of both solid waste, okay, and CO2. Both of these things need to be removed from the body so as not to cause any harm, any problems. Okay, so solid waste removal is done by the colon. And remember, the colon was another term for our large intestine. So as the food passes through the intestines, the water is reabsorbed in the large intestine, and then the solid waste will be stored there until defecation, or the removal of the solid waste. And then carbon dioxide, remember, also needs to be removed from our bodies. And carbon dioxide is removed by the respiratory system. And remember, carbon dioxide is a byproduct of cellular respiration. Remember, cellular respiration is glucose plus oxygen gives us CO2 plus water. So in the last video, we talked about how the body needed oxygen and it needed glucose to be able to make ATP. And one of the products is going to be CO2. And so that CO2 is carried in the bloodstream. Okay, it is carried in the bloodstream, and those capillaries, when they surround those alveoli sacs, the CO2 will diffuse. It'll go from the high concentration in the blood to the low concentration of the lungs. So that CO2 will diffuse back into the lungs so that it can be breathed out. So we've got more interactions here with that excretory system. We've got the digestive system playing a role in the removal of the solid waste, and the respiratory system playing a role in the removal of the CO2. Both of these also incorporate the circulatory system. Remember, the circulatory system provided the basis for the urine. Okay? It's the filtering for the urine, as well as that's how the CO2 gets to the lungs so that it can be removed. Okay? So lots of body systems interactions happening here. Next we have the endocrine system. Okay? The endocrine system secretes hormones. Okay? And hormones are essentially just a chemical messenger. Hormones help regulate and take over for long-term control of things. Okay? These are, our nervous system does quick, fast responses, while the hormones will take over for a long-term response to some kind of stimulus. So these hormones that are secreted can either be protein or steroid based. Okay, we've got a number of glands that contribute to the endocrine system. Okay, you've got a few glands up here in the brain: pituitary, pineal, thyroid gland in your neck, thymus kind of right in front of your heart, adrenal glands that produce the adrenaline on top of our kidneys, okay, the pancreas, ovaries in females, testes in males. Over here on the side, and again, you do not need to memorize all of these glands. This is actually where our focus will be in class, is we'll be looking at these various glands and what they do. Okay, but over here on the side, you can just see how these endocrine glands belong to a variety of different systems. So they all belong to the same endocrine system, but you've got a lot of glands that secrete hormones that also belong to other systems. For instance, the stomach belongs to the digestive system, pancreas also belongs to the digestive system, kidneys belonging to the excretory or urinary system. Okay, you've got these glands up in the brain. So you've got a lot of interaction with other systems here with the endocrine glands. Remember, if our hormones are chemical messengers and they control our long-term response, they're going to be interacting with every single other gland. Some of our major interactions would be definitely the circulatory system. Okay, since remember our circulatory system, its job is to transport things throughout the body. And so these hormones, these chemical messengers, if they're going to be released from a gland, say, up in the brain, and they need to get down to your fingers, okay, they're going to have to travel there via the blood. Okay, in addition to the circulatory system, the nervous system has a major connectivity to our endocrine system. Remember, the endocrine is going to take over for the nervous system for long-term response, and our brain produces tons and tons of hormones. In particular, if you'll notice, it produces a lot of hormones that control other hormones. Okay, so very important to the endocrine system functioning in general is the brain. So as we mentioned before, there are two basic types of hormones. We've got a steroid-based hormone and a non-steroid or protein-based hormone. Okay, so our steroid-based hormone is going to be able to travel because it's lipid-based. Remember, our cell membrane is made up of those phospholipids, so it's able to fit across the cell membrane. And you'll see it travels all the way in to the DNA. Okay, so the steroid hormone has a direct impact on the DNA. It has a direct impact on DNA or gene expression. And remember, when you guys looked around at all the different cells under the microscope in class, all those cells have the exact same DNA in your body. It's which genes are being expressed. So these steroid hormones have a big impact on gene expression. Okay? And steroid hormones are what testosterone and estrogen are in males and females. So these have a major impact on what genes will be expressed to determine gender. Okay? We also have what are called non-steroid or protein-based hormones, and these hormones cannot fit across the cell membrane, so they bind to a receptor on the outside and they trigger a chemical reaction that happens on the inside of the cell. So they trigger this receptor protein that causes the chemical reaction. These would be things like insulin, glucagon, that would help regulate your blood sugar levels in the body, and they may also regulate gene expression as well. But this in general is another way to show how gene expression can be regulated by the outside environment. So looking at a couple examples of hormones, like I said, we're going to be focusing most of our time in class on various hormones. So you don't need to have these, memorized and stuff ahead of time. You do need to be familiar with the system in general. Okay, so we've got our human growth hormone. This one's going to have a major impact on direct, growth and function of the particular cells. Human growth hormone will have an impact on metabolism. Remember, metabolism is the sum of our anabolism and our catabolism, our building up and breaking down. Okay, so we've got this regulation of metabolism that helps with the thyroid hormone, the growth hormone. We also have adrenaline or epinephrine. Okay, so we have our adrenal glands here. Okay, so like I said, it's also called, let's try that again. Okay, also called epinephrine. Okay, so epinephrine or adrenaline, this is our fight or flight response. Okay, this is when your heart starts, you get nervous, you get scared, your heart starts beating faster, you start breathing heavier. Okay, your muscles are primed and ready to go. Usually your pupils will dilate so you can see better. Okay, so this epinephrine gets you ready for fight or flight. And we'll talk more about epinephrine when we talk about feedback loops next. Okay, we also have male and female hormones. For example, down here we've got some male hormones, okay, that are secreted, and some female hormones are estrogens. Testosterones are two big examples of the two. So we'll look a little bit closer at those so we can lead into the reproductive system. So the endocrine system has an important interaction with the reproductive system. Okay, for males, one of the main hormones that will be produced is testosterone. Okay, testosterone is an androgen. Okay, it is secreted by the testes. And it's, like I said, it's an androgen or a steroid-based hormone. Okay, and so testosterone helps increase muscle mass, bone density. It's one of the reasons why guys are essentially bigger than girls. Okay, would be the extra testosterone. I cannot write today. Okay, so it increases muscle mass, it increases bone density. This triggers secondary sex characteristics in males. Okay, those would be things like facial hair, okay, when you become a teenager. Okay, but those are all controlled by the release of testosterone. So here we've got an endocrine gland that is a part of the reproductive system. So here's our male reproductive system. Okay, and it's going to interact also with the muscular system as it's increasing muscle mass, with the skeletal system, increasing bone density. Okay, it's going to interact with the skin as it's doing some of the secondary sex characteristics like the facial hair. Okay, as well as obviously interacting with the reproductive system, okay, so that it can help trigger the production of sperm. And we'll talk just a little bit more about sperm and eggs in just a second. So the female reproductive system will produce a variety of hormones. The one we're going to focus on would be the estrogens. Okay, and so these would be secreted by the ovaries. Some are secreted by the uterus. These are going to help grow the endometrial wall. That's where the fertilized egg can implant when a female is ready to have a child. So they can help grow the endometrial wall, which is part of the uterus, which is where the fetus will develop. Okay. They also, estrogens play an important role in the secondary sex characteristics of females. These would be things like breast development in females when they hit puberty. Okay. So obviously this is going to interact with the reproductive system, okay, as well as the circulatory system for the distribution. So these hormones that we've been talking about that are going to be distributed all over the body, their main job for the reproductive system is to produce offspring, okay, and produce and nourish viable offspring. So the male is going to produce the sperm, which will, formation of the sperm is going to, hormones will play a part in formation of the sperm. And the sperm will travel to the egg where fertilization will occur. Okay, and so fertilization results in the zygote. We have talked about a zygote before. Okay, remember a zygote is the new cell that's going to go through mitosis and eventually become the baby. And so the female reproductive system, okay, in addition to producing the eggs, the female reproductive system is going to help the offspring to grow and to develop. Okay, the baby will grow, the fetus will grow and develop inside the placenta. Okay, which is part of the uterus. You can see the uterus here that is stretched out to contain the child. Okay, and while the baby is in the uterus, in addition to the reproductive system being at work, you've got the mother's circulatory system having a major connection here. Okay, the mother's circulatory system is what's going to provide the oxygen and the nutrients through the umbilical cord to the baby. So we've got another interaction between systems going on. Okay, when the baby has reached maturity, the baby will have to then travel through the birth canal. Okay, and so the birth canal, the baby will be able to travel through the birth canal due to muscle contractions. So we've got the reproductive working with another system here. Okay, working with the muscular system to produce the muscle contractions of the uterus that will push the baby through the birth canal and result in our newborn baby. So we will be working with these systems in class and moving on to feedback loops after that.